Trachoma is a disease I am certain I learned about in medical school and probably forgot sometime after I took part three of my boards in 1990. And why? Because it just doesn't occur in the United States, or at least rarely enough that I would never see it as a student, an intern, and it's not a disease that radiologists pay much attention to. But it remains a common cause of blindness in the world. It's the number one cause of infectious cause of blindness in the world. And as you see, there's some good news to report here. So briefly, chlamydia trachomatis affects about 80 million people throughout the world, primarily causing disease in poorer areas with poor sanitation. Often children, and there are reports, by the way, that as many as 60 to 90% of children in some areas are actively infected at a given point in time, but mainly, predominantly children at first. And the infection itself is not seemingly devastating. It can mimic just benign viral conjunctivitis, which anybody listening to our show has seen either in their own family members or someone near to them. But in its untreated form, particularly with repetitive infections, it causes distortions to the lids and eyelashes that ultimately scar the cornea, leaving the individual with blindness. It's a 100% preventable form of blindness, and yet 1.2 million people are completely blind, and another 1.2 million have reduced vision just from this disease. And once they're blind, they're blind. You can't reverse that. You can't treat it with antibiotics or surgery at that point. So there's a very organized and relatively simple public health approach to this disease that's not particularly costly. So for the tens of thousands of people that already have damaged eyelids but not blindness yet, there's surgery. Then there's antibiotics to treat the active disease, and Pfizer is known to donate azithromycin for this purpose. There's facial cleanliness and personal hygiene, and then there's environmental changes such as sanitation. And this is described by the World Health Organization as SAFE: surgery, antibiotics, facial cleanliness, environmental changes, SAFE. Now, put aside, Africa remains the continent that is most affected at the current time, and the World Health Organization has set 2030 as the date for global elimination. And despite the setback introduced by COVID, more progress is being made. So why do I bring this up this week? Because this week, India was certified by the World Health Organization as having eliminated trachoma as a public health problem. We often focus on diseases of the rich developed world on this podcast. We forget often that there are so many people that suffer from blindness, elephantiasis, or die from malaria, all conditions that can be eradicated if we just have the will to do it. And India, working with the global community, and again, credit to Pfizer for contributing, has done just that. There's a lot of bad news in the world presently and on the horizon. We're going to continue to try to cover a lot of that and elevate that. But every so often, I feel incredibly inspired by my global health colleagues who are making a difference every day, working with people, with governments, with clergy, with other community leaders to materially improve the lives of so many.